We are learning one of the most important and lost practices, learning to hear the voice of God. I'm coming to the UK to put on some conferences. It's it's September. I think it was about 3 weeks ahead of time. The Father spoke to me and he says, you need to change your flights. I'm like, Lord, that's expensive to do. He says, trust me, you need to change your flights. We landed in Glasgow on 9/11. Then the whole world shuts down. A lot of our work and a lot of our message is the care of the soul. People needed that. We were able to be present to people in need at a time of global trauma.
Welcome, everybody. This is Simon Gilbo. Welcome to Inspired. It's great to be back for another fantastic week of challenge and stirring stories of what God is at work. You know, I think all of us, we just had enough of being relentlessly bombarded by negativity in the press. It just makes you fearful and anxious and cynical and depressed. And I have got zero doubt this week that you're going to leave inspired, because we've got with us the living legend that is John Eldredge. Welcome, John.
Simon, it's good to see you.
So good to have you. So John's an author. Many of you have heard of him, and he's written gazillions of books. But I was just checking on Google, and Wild at Heart, which really impacted me, has sold over 7 million. I think 16 million of books written by you have been sold worldwide so far. So yeah, that's 16 million more than me. Anyway, John's also a counselor. He's a teacher. He's the president of Wild at Heart Ministries, and we connected through our mutual friend Mike Carson, who's also been on the podcast. And I love it, the impact your ministry has had, John. And I don't want to say anything else really, because I just want to get into it. Let's go 65 years back to when you were born, and you talk a lot. You share about, having the challenge of having an alcoholic father. What did it look like, your childhood?
Yeah, both parents were alcoholics. My mother was what they used to call a social alcoholic, kind of a functioning. And God bless her, she had to go back to work. My dad couldn't keep a job, bills to pay. So she disappeared, really. I have no memories of playing with my mother. I have no memories of her reading a book to me. She had to go back to work. And then she'd come home in the evening and use alcohol, which was, there's this little bittersweet, isn't it? That she's got this difficult marriage and she's married to an alcoholic and she's using alcohol herself to try and manage life. So nothing but mercy, for both of them. But yeah, those were rough years. And I think nowadays, and as a therapist and some of the language that's coming out, I realized that there was no attachment in my home until my grandfather stepped in. And that's just a sweet part. This is before I knew God. This was a very sort of typical, I would say, American home, middle class, trying to get the American dream, own a home, that sort of thing. But there was no faith. There was no God. I had never been to church. I'd never read the Bible. But God's first intervention in those years of sort of trauma and home, my grandfather was a cattle rancher in Eastern Oregon in the U.S. And my parents, I became a very wild kid because growing up in that environment, there's not a lot of boundaries. Sure. So, I had a police record. I got kicked out of school. And so they would ship me off to my grandfather's ranch in the summers, which was God's intervention for me. He was a beautiful, kind, loving man, cowboy, raising beef cattle in the American West. Huge tracts of land, and we would get on horses and go, fix fence and, move cattle. And I didn't know at the time what was taking place in me, but there was attachment. It was learning to receive love. And there was masculine formation taking place, which, years later would really lay the foundation for Wild at Heart and what that's helped men with. So yeah, there was this turbulent home, frankly, just a lot of absence. And then the summers were almost idyllic, of going off into an Edenic beauty, countryside, fields, and I didn't know God at the time, but He was rescuing me.
Was your grandfather, was he not just a good man, was he a God man, or was he discipling you without Christ, as it were?
Well, he had a very simple faith, as oftentimes, farm folk do. I would remember him playing. I can still hear he would play these old LPs of hymns in the evening in the ranch house. I can hear those now. So I think that there was something of Christ being imbued to me, but he was quiet. He, like many ranchers are, but there was a love that was passed on that was certainly Christ-like.
So what was your journey to Jesus? I gather it was quite dramatic. So,
oh gosh. Okay. So high school years, turbulent, kicked out of high school. I actually had a 4.0. I was a very, very bright student, but they just couldn't keep me in school because this is back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it's the drug movement in Los Angeles, and everybody was just dropping out and smoking pot and doing LSD and all that. And I was right in the thick of that. I was deeply spiritually hungry, though. I mean, there was just a chasm of emptiness within my soul. There was a spiritual hunger, and I wasn't looking for religion. I had no interest in religion. I was looking for truth and for answers. And, as the beloved Francis Schaeffer helped explain, to many of us, that even the use of drugs and the psychedelics it was a spiritual search. So, yeah, we used to go out into the American Southwest desert and build sweat lodges and eat peyote and look for God. I mean, we were really seeking, but it was pretty broken. And we actually had a couple of very spiritual encounters. I saw a dear friend of mine become completely possessed by a demon, and he was thrown around like a rag doll. And it was a very frightening experience for all of us. And I realized I've opened the door to the spiritual realm. I can tell you right now, this is not God. It's dark, and I'm not looking for darkness. I'm looking for what is good and beautiful and redemptive. And so I became very aware of the unseen realm. And I was reading, the New Age stuff and all the, goofy that was being thrown out at that time. But this is also the time in Southern California when the Jesus Revolution broke out. And God was moving very, very powerfully. This was the last great revival in the Western world until now. And both my wife and I came to Christ in that. But my encounter, I was literally in my bedroom one night. I am deep in the drug culture, been arrested. And I was I was doing what I kind of knew to do to pray. And the presence of Jesus Christ filled the room.
Wow.
Now, no one had ever shared the gospel with me. I did not know what the cross meant. I had no idea. But I just knew, and this would be, I suppose, the gift of the Holy Spirit, the gift of God. I just knew Jesus. And here's what I prayed. I said, Jesus, I don't know what to do with my life, but I have a feeling that you do. And so if you would help me, please help me. I did not like the person I was becoming. I mean, the drug culture is one of deception and betrayal. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. You can lose your life at any moment. And I could tell the person that I was becoming was just a shell of a human being. And that night, Jesus shows up in my bedroom. And I didn't know the revival's going on in LA, but this is what he's doing to many Muslims right now, obviously in the world, right?
Yeah.
Just these personal, intimate encounters. It was so life-changing, Simon, that within 2 weeks, I am completely off drugs. I mean, alcohol, sober, completely sober. And you know how difficult that is for many people. As a therapist now, it's very difficult to get your body even and the neurochemistry out of all that stuff. Completely sober, completely alive. And some dear folks invite me to come to church with them. I'd never been to church. And I just lit up. I mean, I just knew. this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And then I mentioned Schaeffer. It was really quite beautiful. A friend of mine gave me the entire collected works of Francis Schaeffer. It's like a 5-volume series of it. And Schaeffer was speaking to that generation about the search for transcendence and the comprehensive truth of the Christian faith. Because I knew I was in the arts at the time. We were in theater. I knew if I find it, it's got to be true to everything, science and commerce and the arts. That's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for the answer. And God stepped in some really dramatic ways.
Wonderful. So you studied, your first undergraduate degree was in theater, and you ran a theater company in LA. Were you already married by that stage?
No, not yet. My wife and I met. We actually met in high school in America, and she loved the theater as well. We both thought at some point we would have a career, that I'd have a lifetime in the theater. My secret aspiration was actually to come join the RSC.
Royal Shakespeare.
And then Christ, of course, used all that because he was training us, in our gifting of speaking and storytelling. And if you want to be a good actor, you have to be something of an amateur psychologist, because you have to get into the head and the emotions and the vibe, right, of your character. And so it was a very, very natural segue, from theater into human story. Went back to grad school, became a therapist, and realized that what I really wanted to do was work at the level of human redemption. But yeah, we would do street theater in Los Angeles, sharing Christ on the streets. Those were really fun, spontaneous years.
Give me your favorite story, because I spent 6 months in Hamburg's red light district doing street outreach, and that you'd have the most normal people who suddenly, it's obviously a very dark street, the red light districts, satanic strongholds, and suddenly these demons would manifest in the most dramatic way, and people that had been so benign and nice suddenly turned into horrendous, aggressive, vitriolic, spitting, punching, manifesting people. Did you have any sort of wild experiences on the streets?
Well, particularly trying to minister in the drug crowd, right? And this is, I'm going to put a little footnote in here for those who are, there's a resurgence in the use of psychedelics and the healing of human trauma right now. I want to throw a little red flag on that for folks. Please look at that very carefully, because hallucinogens, psychedelics, they open the human spirit up to the unseen realm.
Yeah.
But if that's not guided by Jesus Christ, you don't know what you're opening yourself up to, which is what we had done, right? Yeah. And so, sharing Christ with those folks in particular, man, you can get a really sudden, violent reaction from people. But the power of the name of Jesus. We were so innocent. We were, we're now we've now got the law of 10,000 hours at this, right? So we're highly trained in dealing with the unseen realm. But back then it was just, Lord Jesus, come, and that would often be enough to settle the situation. And I became something of a local legend in my community because my past was known, alcohol, drugs, police record, kicked out of high school, all that. I was known as a pretty wild. And then people heard John Eldredge came to Jesus Christ. What? And it opened up multiple opportunities to share faith with some dear, very, very broken people.
So Wild at Heart, or did it start off as Ransomed Heart Ministries and then it became Wild at Heart? Was that the chronology?
Yes, although it did, we didn't envision any of this. I remember there was a moment, so I'm maturing in my faith, came to faith at 19, married Stacy at 23, and we ran the theater company together. I remember getting on my knees in our tiny, tiny little house in Los Angeles one afternoon, and I just said, Jesus, I want to be part of something big. I don't want to be part of something small. I give you my life. I want to be part of something really tremendous. Not for myself at all, but you and what you're doing in the world. I know you have adventure for us. I know you have something just beautiful. And I had no idea how wild the answer to that prayer was going to become. So we moved from LA to Colorado because an opportunity came up for me to go to grad school. And we knew we did not want to raise a family in Los Angeles. Los Angeles at that time, they hadn't solved the air pollution problem. They hadn't solved the drug problem. I mean, they still haven't, but it was a dark place. And every time we had any kind of holiday, we would get out of town. We would always leave. And we would come to the Rocky Mountain West. We love the mountains, the rivers. Yeah. So an opportunity to go to grad school in Colorado came up. We jumped at the opportunity. And I became very good friends with a mentor in that community of therapists and students named Brent Curtis. And he helped me through grad school. He invited me to then come and join his practice here. He had a small Christian counseling practice in Colorado Springs. And we shared a vision of reaching men together. It was on both our hearts. And so we began to do, plan and we held our first retreat for men. It was the very beginning years. My goodness, this is 96. We hold a first men's retreat. It's the very first Wild at Heart retreat. And we're going to take guys fly fishing and horseback riding and rock climbing. And I had come out of the climbing community. I love climbing. And so had Brent. On the second day of the retreat, he was killed in a climbing accident, which was just devastating. And yet God, I need to tell a couple stories around that because it's so extraordinary. So we had written a book called Sacred Romance the year before, and it was modestly successful. We're two unknown therapists. We don't have big platforms, but the book did well. And so we went away, Brent and I went away on a spiritual retreat to ask God what to do next. Now, this was in January, and both of us heard the Lord say very clearly, don't plan anything. Which we thought, well, I mean, you're the Lord. Well, okay, we won't. And 4 months later, Brent's killed. And he knew what was coming. He knew what was about to unfold. And we hadn't put a, business into motion. We hadn't put conferences into motion. I mean, it was just a kindness of God. And everyone in Brent's world, they expected me to take over the counseling practice. They expected me to become the hero, counsel his clients through their grief. And I was praying after his death, and Jesus gave us what began to become a series of very wild directions. He says, I want you to shut down the practice and follow me. And I said, why? He said, John, when you're sitting in a session, you're talking to one person. I want you to talk to a lot more than that. And that was all we got. That's all we knew. So I quit my job. We closed down the practice. We lived for 2 years on miracle. I mean, we had no groceries, Simon. We had no money to pay the bills. We would come home to a tray of lasagna on the front porch. Just the kindness of people, anonymous. We come home to an envelope with, $100 cash in it, and we could go buy groceries. Those were 2 extraordinary years. We have 3 young boys at this point. It looks like the most irresponsible thing in the world, but if you hook your wagon up to the wild one, the untamed lion, right? Then he birthed what was to become, and we started out as Ransomed Heart, became Wild at Heart, the organization. And the 3rd book I wrote was called Wild at Heart. And it was that just rocketed. And created, this incredible movement among men. And there's that prayer that I prayed years before in Los Angeles as a young believer starting to take place. Something very, very beautiful began to unfold.
Let me quote from Wild at Heart, and it's fun talking to you because I've quoted you in sermons over the years, and this ties in very much with Brent and his death and that tragedy and suffering. But you wrote this: until we are broken, our life will be self-centered, self-reliant. Our strength will be our own. So long as you think you really are something in and of yourself, what will you need God for? I don't trust a man who hasn't suffered. I think that line is so important. Speak into that a bit.
Well, okay. So human nature being what it is, we try and organize a life where even God is sort of a backup plan, right? Love it if he shows up. That would be fantastic. But if he doesn't, I'm okay because I've got my retirement. I've got my thing worked out. I have my car, my apartment, in a culture in the developed world, in the developed West, you have such extraordinary power to do that. I mean, you don't like the weather, you just go over to the wall and hit a few buttons and you can make the room cold or hot. You don't have to go out to get your meals. You can have them delivered to your door. You get same day delivery on all your items. It fuels the false self. It fuels a confidence that is in every human being of, there may be a God, but I'm not going to rely on it. I'm going to secure myself in the world. And then if there is a God, how fabulous. It's like dessert, and God is committed to bringing that house of cards down in every person's life. He loves us too much to let that go on unchallenged. And so in one way or another, through your health, your marriage, through a teenage daughter who shows up pregnant, he will bring down the false self. And then that's our choice. What will we do in that moment? So when Brent died, I was a very fiercely committed loner. Brent was in some ways like the closest friend I'd ever had. And I knew in my heart, I just went, I'm done. That's it. I'm over with that. I'm going to go it alone. And it was almost like God with Job. He came to me in my grief, not with comfort, but with like a severe discipline. And he said, I will not let you. I will not let you walk alone. Because he knew it would destroy my life. You get fame, you get money, you become somebody, and you have no friends around you. You have no accountability. You have no support. Like that's an affair waiting to happen. That's, that's an addiction waiting to break out. So he said, I won't let that happen. And he used the tragedy to birth a movement of authentic masculinity, which is vulnerability. It's not the hoorah. People who don't know what Wild at Heart is, it's like, oh, you're all lumberjacks, you're all racing motorcycles. What is, it's amazing. You come to any Wild at Heart event, and you've been, Simon, so you can bear witness to this. It's mostly tears. It's bringing down the false self, allowing your father to love you, coming home. It's a homecoming. And it's a deconstruction of the false self and a coming into sonship. Well, you can't do that while you're trying to build your own kingdom.
Indeed. So we're going to dip in and out of teaching, I guess, through the questions. I sort of drew you into that a bit. But let's go back to chronologically. Sort of 9/11, was that a key moment for you and following the voice of God?
Well, okay. So the ministry is just getting started. And we are learning one of the most important and lost practices to the church, and again, in the developed world. These things are not less well known, in in the church and, where you've been in Burundi and in other places, learning to hear the voice of God, risking following him, stepping out in faith. So I'm coming to the UK to put on some conferences. So these were some of my first speaking things that were going on. Of course, it's '01, it's September. We have tickets over. And I think it was about 3 weeks ahead of time, the Father spoke to me and he says, you need to change your flights. I'm like, Lord, that's expensive to do. He says, trust me, you need to change your flights. So we get a hold of a travel agent. We were actually able to do it for a nominal fee. We landed in Glasgow on 9/11.
Wow.
And we would not, obviously, then the whole world shuts down, right? And it was wildness like that of trust me, follow me, I will guide you. And then we were able to hold those events at a time when people were deeply shaken and needed, a lot of our work and a lot of our message is the care of the soul. And so people needed that in those moments. And I can't explain the mystery of God and his sovereignty, but he did have us change our plans, and we were able to be present to people in need at a time of just global trauma. And it's been like that ever since. If you were to drop in on a leadership meeting, at Wild at Heart, we have some of the most talented, gifted people I could find. These are brilliant people who love God, but are immensely creative. Tech people and marketing and that kind of thing. And we bring all our best stuff to the table, but then we always ask. Right? The ministry was born out of listening prayer, and we continue in listening prayer. And he has saved us just countless times from doing really dumb things or doing really shiny, people were throwing millions of dollars at us to do like a Wild at Heart television show. And we were about to sign a contract, literally millions of dollars they're just giving us. And we're in prayer and Jesus says, you can do that. It'll kill you. That's all he says. And we knew it. We knew if we were to, commit ourselves to a television show, it would have just changed our lives and changed who we are and what we want to do. So over time, letting God continue to lead us right down to this moment.
Just, I'm trying to imagine some of our listeners who maybe don't feel like they hear the voice of God. You talk very naturally about God says this, and you got these messages. How did that come to you?
First off, you have to open the heart. It's like a telephone conversation. If your heart is offline, it's going to be very hard to connect. Because as Ephesians 3 describes, when you invite Christ into your life, when you open your life to Jesus, he takes residence in the depth of your being, which is your heart. The heart becomes the new dwelling place. Your little tabernacles walking around in the world. It's really quite beautiful. And so for us, because our language was the language of the heart, because we were learning to pay attention to the movements of God in the heart, and it's not always language and words, right? You get a sense, you have a pause, and his creative ability to, he has spoken to us. So we have this big trip planned down to Patagonia, South America. It's a scads of money. I don't know for sure God is in it. It's not. I said, God, you just have to confirm this. It's right down to the final day where we can still cancel our flights and get our money back. And I look at my desk, and someone has left their water bottle on my desk, and it says Patagonia on it. And I asked God for 3. I'm like, okay, that's 1. And like, I need 2 more if we're going to do this crazy trip all the way down to, the tip of South America.
Yeah.
Then a friend emails me out of the blue who I hadn't talked to in years. And he says, hey, I just got back from Patagonia. I want to tell you about it. I'm like, okay, that's two. That's two. It's 10 o'clock at night. It's the deadline is here, right? Guys, I don't know what you're going to make of this story, but I am in the loop, taking care of things. And I look down at my undershorts and the label is
Patagonia.
Patagonia. I'm like, Jesus, you're talking to me through my underwear. Like, okay. And we booked the trip and we go, and it's phenomenal. It's adventure and ministry and wilderness and connection. Oh yeah, it's just incredible. Once in a lifetime adventure. So he will speak to you in ways you can understand. Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Right. And through a song, through a sermon, through a passage you read, through a friend over coffee. But over time, yes, over time, the intimacy that God seeks with every human soul. It's so beautiful, Simon. You know this life. The intimacy that he wants, the connection. I mean, can you imagine a father that never spoke to his kids?
Yeah.
A friend who he'd get together with you, but he'd never say anything. I don't know how you'd support the friendship. And so, yes, over time, with care and practice, we do learn. We do learn to hear the inner voice of it. It's not audio like you're listening to me right now. It's not external. It's internal. It's in your inmost being. You do learn. And I mean, he has saved us from wildfires and motorcycle accidents, all sorts of things by saying, hey, just stop for a minute. Mm-hmm. Hey, hang on a second. And then, whoa, something goes flying by it.
Yeah.
We can learn. I understand people's frustration with that. It can be a clunky process, but you can learn.
Well, I mean, for guys particularly, get on those boot camps. I mean, that's a great place to listen and learn.
Right. Yeah.
So you got the Wild at Heart Ministry, I mean, explosion across the world. Just tell us how that went.
He told us something very beautiful in the beginning. We had seen the big ministries and we had seen some of the dilemma and just the overhead and the administrative, and we knew we didn't want that. And so what he told us in the very beginning, he said, I want you to stay small as an organization and give everything away. And so right now in the world, you can go to one of our, quote, events. There's Wild at Heart type events being hosted in Poland, Finland, Norway, in the UK, in South Africa, New Zealand, in the Medellin drug prisons in Colombia. They're holding Wild at Heart Bible studies. And guys are coming to Christ. They're coming to Christ. And so the beauty of what God, he saw it coming. Do you happen to know it's a fairly famous prophecy over the UK by Jean Darnell of the fires she saw over the UK. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was an American evangelist that was there in the 60s and 70s. And she had this vision. She was like, way up, like in an airplane over the UK, over the British Isles. And she saw all these fires springing up. And then she saw it leap over to Europe. The night before we came to the UK, I had that same vision. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know it was someone else's vision. I had the exact same thing, but a friend had sent it to me in an email. He says, hey, read this on the flight over. So I'm on the flight over. I pull that out. I read this vision of these beautiful fires springing up all over. I went, oh my goodness, I dreamt that last night. Same exact vision. So because he had us decentralize, like it's been able to be organic. Yeah. It's been able, everyone gets a role. Everyone gets to follow the wild goose, right? And walk with God. So the Wild at Heart became is right now this global phenomenon. And the beautiful thing is it has very little to do with John Eldredge, actually.
And that's a great satisfaction, isn't it? That's
isn't that lovely? Yeah, we only want God and what he's doing, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I love it when I hear of stories of someone I've been part of their journey and trained them up and equipped them and sent them out, and then you hear the stuff that they're doing. It's so beautiful. So, go on, give us some of the stories of you. You mentioned the cartels of Medellin or Baghdad. Tell us some of those stories.
Okay, so then the testimonies start coming back in, right? The reports start coming back in from the field. We get a report from an American soldier who was in the Gulf War, so the first round in Iraq, and he is in a firefight outside Baghdad, okay? And he looks down in the sands, and there is a copy of Wild at Heart lying there in the sand. I kid you not. And so he thinks it's one of his mates, and so he just shoves it, into his jacket and goes on with the mission and gets back to the platoon and the regiment. And pulls it out and says, "Hey, who's this? This fell out. Somebody dropped this in the sand." No one. No one. But it starts going around the regiment, and guys start coming to Christ. They form a Bible study around it. I mean, you just go, what?
Yes.
It is such a beautiful, broad thing. And then, we have a friend who's she's a single older woman, has dedicated her life to Christ, missionary in Colombia, teaches at a seminary there, but she got a hold of Wild at Heart, and she knew this is what these young boys that are being recruited into the cartels, they're looking for everything we talk about. They're looking for fathers. They're looking for brotherhood. They're looking for adventure. And yes, men know somewhere in their being, you're made to fight. You're just made to fight for good, not for evil. But you are made for this. And she's like, if we take this into the prisons, this is going to change these guys' lives. So she goes in, this single, rather ordinary, honestly, she sort of looks like maybe your local librarian, county clerk. Yeah.
You don't know my wife. You don't know my wife's a librarian. She doesn't look ordinary at all.
Okay. All right. Well,
I get you.
You get the idea. The first day she goes into the prisons, there's a soccer game that she sees, football breaking out in the yard. Simon, they're using a human head. These prisons, this is serious danger, serious stuff. She goes in and she starts these Wild at Heart Bible studies and starts leading all of these young men and some of these older guys to Christ. They get out, they become pastors, missionaries, street preachers, and there's this whole movement among the cartels and there's deep trauma in that as well. The healing of human trauma and the homecoming of these men to their heavenly Father. Yeah, it's exquisitely beautiful. Stories that only Jesus Christ could organize.
Yeah, you could not write the script. Thank you, Lord, that you're the script writer. Hey folks, Simon Gilbo here in Burundi, and I've just spent an amazing trip seeing the incredible work that's going on in the harshest of circumstances. Burundi is still right at the bottom of the pile in terms of being statistically the hungriest country in the world, one of the poorest, and yet some of God's best troops are in Burundi. What's amazing is that we have some very generous funders who've been willing to contribute 200 grand to be matched if you want to double your money in terms of impact. The reason we all the more need to double our money is that there's been massive food inflation this year, cost of living, and people are really struggling to live. They're struggling to send their kids to school. They're struggling to eat more than one meal a day. I cannot imagine being confronted with that circumstance, that situation. So I would just plead with you, think of that prostitute that's only gone into prostitution because she's got to feed her kids, or these street kids that we're getting off the street and they're getting educated, or the orphan, or people that have come out of Islam that have lost everything. We've met them even this week, that have been kicked out of their family, lost their kids. And we can get behind them and bless them and fill them with hope. People have wept this week with us in general as they've shared their concerns. So double your money at the link below. Give us either a one-off or in general monthly would be superb, so that we can continue impacting what we reckon was just under 1 million lives meaningfully impacted in the last 12 months. We want to ramp things up. Would you help us? Link below. Go for it. Okay, I'm going to quote to you from page 95 of Waking the Dead. I love this. You know, you're so talking my language in what I was going through in Burundi at the time. Either we wake to tackle our to-do list, get things done, guided by our morals and whatever clarity we may have in the moment, or we wake in the midst of a dangerous story as God's intimate ally, following him into the unknown. If you're not pursuing a dangerous quest with your life, well, then you don't need a guide. If you haven't found yourself in the midst of ferocious war, I mean, I was in the literal war, then you don't need a seasoned captain. If you've settled in your mind to live as though this is a fairly neutral world and you are simply trying to live your best life as you can, then you can probably get by with the Christianity of tips and techniques. Maybe I'll give you about a 50-50 chance. But if you intend to live the story that God is telling, and if you want the life he offers, then you're going to need more than a handful of principles, however noble they may be. There are too many twists and turns in the road ahead, too many ambushes. I had literal ambushes, waiting only God knows where, too much at stake. You cannot possibly prepare yourself for every situation. Narrow is the way, said Jesus. How shall we be sure to find it? We need God intimately, and we need him desperately. Wow, love that. Talk to us.
You know that story. I just think that that need is becoming more and more clear to your listeners. Like, it's just very difficult to look at the world right now as a fairly benevolent place. And, you know, there is a naivete that came with the comfort culture into the developed world that these marvelous God stories that we're telling, and you could tell 1,000, and that your other guests tell, you know, people think those are the exceptions. You know, yes, if you become a missionary into the cartel prisons, you know, yes, you're gonna see Jesus Christ move. But I think the idea that we can get on with just our good intentions, I think that's wearing very thin now in the world. People don't take much convincing anymore to realize that the world is a very dangerous place. It's a very unsettled place. And we need to add to this conversation, only because it's the kind thing to do. There is a spiritual breakout going on in the world, but it is on both sides, folks. It's yes, there are, you know, the wonderful reports of churches growing and young people coming to faith, and, you know, some of the remarkable things that have been happening even in London. Bible sales are up. Yeah, you know, people are reporting on that. It's very positive, very hopeful. We could be in the midst of another great move of God, like we saw in the Jesus Revolution, and, you know, that went all over the world. However, at the very same time, the other side is also, you know, releasing all of its power and energies and agents into the world. You know, witchcraft is one of the fastest growing religions in America. It may be the second fastest, actually. But the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness are both accelerating in this hour. Okay, this is what you're saying. And I think many of us kind of had this, I don't know, conception that if we were ever to see revival in our day, it would only be the good side. You know, people just becoming charitable to one another, keeping their promises, you know, sexual immorality falling down, all that. No. When the kingdom of God surges in the world, like it's surging right now, all over the world, the kingdom of darkness is as well. And so, like that quote that you read, you know, if you realize I am in a love story that is set in a world at war, I'm not living in the Shire of Tolkien. I'm living at the Battle of Helm's Deep. You know, This isn't Little House on the Prairie or All Creatures Great and Small. This is something much more, you know, like Afghanistan spiritually for every human soul. This isn't unique to Simon and John Eldredge and, you know, missionaries and that sort of thing. Then it shifts our discipleship to Christ. then we say, wow, I need to take this a lot more serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to learn to follow, for one thing. We were talking about listening. I need to learn to follow, but I also need, if I could bestow a couple of gifts on the Western world right now, the first thing I would bestow on people is a re-enchanted worldview. A re-enchanted, because we don't realize what happened to us in the West was, starting with the Enlightenment and all that, the spiritual realm, the unseen realm was just robbed from us. And people have a very materialistic view, a very scientific cause and effect view of the world. But, and so what I would want for people is a worldview that re-embraces the unseen realm on both the good and the bad. As you're sending your kids off to school, you pray, angels, guard my children today. You call upon the resources knowing that you're living in something that is very, very beautiful and very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember feeling this oppressive presence in the jungle one night at a mission station. We just arrived, and I woke up, I rebuked it in Jesus' name. The next day, the missionary said, "Did you sleep well?" No one sleeps well on their first night here. There's so much witchcraft directed against us that they're not used to the spiritual atmosphere. And so, folks, I think if you struggle with those stories, I think a question to ask is, am I so adversely affected by my own secular materialistic worldview that doesn't allow for that sort of stuff? Because it is very real, and as John says, throughout the centuries, it's only more recently in the last 100 years I think that people would struggle with those kind of stories. Before, everyone's worldview was suffused with the supernatural and the fact that darkness is very real, as is light. Yeah.
Yeah, Martin Luther's famous stories of waking up to the presence of Satan himself, right? This is good old Lutheranism, okay? Or Aquinas' stories, or you go back into any of the legacy of the church. It is a poverty that was thrust upon us. It's not your fault. It's a worldview that was given to you. But if you take the positive side for a moment, the number of men and women coming to Christ out of Islam through direct encounters with Jesus Christ. Okay, so a friend of mine, it's a missionary, woman meets Christ in a dream, Islamic gal. He gives her the phone number of a priest 2 countries away. She calls the priest. He finishes leading her to Christ, baptizes her over the phone, tells her how to download a Bible app and hide it, on the phone so she can begin to read the scriptures. We love those stories, right? We love these wonderful, miraculous stories. On the positive side, we're just helping people understand, again, these shootings that are going on. This is not just human sin. These people are being motivated and compelled by dark forces. It's nothing to be afraid of. Psalm 91, though 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, it will not come near you if you make the Most High your shelter. So I think our great need in discipleship is the re-enchanted worldview, re-understanding of the actual framework of reality, and then teaching folks how to deal with this. Again, the point is discipleship to Christ. The point is intimacy with Jesus and allowing him to lead us into the stories that he wants and to equip the church in the West for what's going on in this hour.
Wow. So listen, in terms of what now, you're 65, you're still healthy, you're still doing lots of outdoor stuff, so there's still plenty of gas in the tank. But what do you see ahead of you?
So I was reading Rees Howell's biography this summer, the famous Welsh intercessor. Oh my goodness, folks! If you haven't read his biography, I would just say start there, because his walk with God, the intimacy, the risk taking, right? and then the results, the powers of his prayers, just extraordinary. Well, there's a moment in Reese's life that God invites him out of public life into a more private life as an intercessor. And my heart leapt. And I said, "Oh, Papa, are you inviting me now to become a private, I'm a very public person, right? Are you inviting me into a private life?" I mean, it wasn't 1001, 1002. And he says, no, I'm not. He's given Stacy and me an extraordinary honor of at this stage in our life being like a spiritual mother and father to quite a number of people around the world. And if you'll look around, there's not a lot. So some of the beautiful ones have passed on, the Dallas Willards and that sort of thing, Eugene Petersons, or we've seen way too many scandals in our hour as well, right? And there's a dearth of men and women that have 40, 50 years with Christ, loads of stories, loads of experience. And so we are enjoying a season through our podcast, through these Friday videos I do, through different things, through a lot of personal mentoring of other leaders to just be like a spiritual mama and papa in this hour.
Hi Simon. A few months ago, I was made redundant and set myself up as a self-employed cleaner. A friend suggested I plug into podcasts, and that's how I discovered Inspired. These incredible, honest stories transported me into another world as I cleaned, and I love them. I realised over time my faith and expectations increased, and I started to believe and realise it's never too late and you're never too old to do something. So my cleaning career has taken a U-turn. I'm now working for Mercy Ships UK on their recruitment team. I started this week and I couldn't be happier. Obviously God has threaded it all together, but Inspired genuinely played a part in that. And the podcast often challenged me with people's financial generosity. And so in my first week, I've sent a little something as a thank you to support the work in Burundi that you care so much about.
Another quote that I've pulled out that I've used a number of times, I think it's Wild at Heart. You said this: "We are at war and a bloody battle is over our hearts. I'm astounded how few Christians see this, how little they protect their hearts. We act as if we live in a sleepy little town during peacetime. We don't. We live in the spiritual equivalent of Bosnia or Beirut," and I add, or Burundi. Act like it. Watch over your heart. Don't just let anything in. Don't let it just go anywhere. What is this doing to my heart is a question I ask in every situation. You got Proverbs 4:23, haven't you? Above all else, guard your heart. It's the wellspring of life above all else. So talk to us about that.
Simon, this is so important because we're living in a moment of global mental health crisis.
Yeah.
So not just for men, but if we take men's data for a moment, ever since they started keeping data about 40 years ago, we're at the all-time high of anxiety and depression and what they call death of despair among men. So that would be, overdosing and alcohol and suicide. But that's global, and that's across all peoples, all gender. The world is in a mental health crisis, and anyone who's in the mental health profession will tell you there's no way we can keep up. Every therapist has a waiting list. Every clinic is overrun. All the governmental mental health services absolutely drained. This is the gospel moment. I have the best news in the world because the soul is healed through union with Christ. The soul is healed through union with Christ. This is such marvelous news because you can't tell those, the young girls being prostituted in India, the young boys who are being taken to motel rooms, not just in Chiang Mai, but in your town. You can't tell them, well, if you can get, thousands of dollars and get to a professional, maybe you can experience the love of God and his healing. That's not the gospel. The gospel is that the soul is healed through union with Christ, drawing people into intimacy. And this is different than just I believe, right? I am the vine, you are the branch. We are all meant to come home into a rich intimacy that in the spiritual is actual union. And the union gets down into your story. It gets down into your trauma. It does heal the soul. And I believe in all the mental health work. I believe in the help of medication. I'm a strong believer in the support of, anti-anxiety, depression, etc., pharmaceuticals. However, God has been healing human souls for thousands of years prior to all our fancy stuff. And this is the best news for the entire planet. Whatever your resources, whatever access you have to professionals, the soul is still healed through union with Christ. And so what we seek is union. What we seek is union and communion and allowing Christ in to do the Psalm 23 thing of, you restore my soul. I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah. So, I'd love to carry on, but we can't. So give us your parting shot. Go for it. Whatever you want to say to us.
I'm going to give folks one thing to do. If they say, well, what should I do? Right before the pandemic, and this is another God story, we built an app called the 1 Minute Pause because people need shepherding into that union communion experience, right? So, if you were with Teresa of Avila and she'd lead you in the prayer of recollection, or in earlier ages, you might have had a mentor to do this. So we built an app called the 1 Minute Pause, and we put it out there on the internet for free. We just put it out in the App Store for free. Okay. It's very, very simple practices, these lovely prayers, music. It just leads people into a anxiety reducing, God enveloping simplicity of union and communion. The next month, the pandemic rolled across the world. So 1 million people have downloaded this app now, and the testimonies coming in are just extraordinary. I use this with my kids. I use this, with my anxiety. I use this with my students. I would go do that. I would give that a try. You get, iPhone, Android. It's called the 1 Minute Pause. It's for free. It would lead you in what I'm trying to describe here. It leads you into that beautiful solace of communion with Christ. And so you give it a try and you realize, oh, wow, this works. Like I am helped. And then you go deeper, and there's deeper modules within the program that you can go deeper and deeper as you have time. That's what I do if I were you.
Great stuff, John. Well, thank you for your long distance discipleship of me over a few decades. I really appreciate it. And you've done that to millions of people. So we just cheer you on in your next chapter and all you're doing. God bless you, brother.
Yes, and bless you back. Thank you, Simon.
Wonderful. Listen, I'm just going to close with one last quote because I think it's good to send us on our way. Thinking of life as a journey reminds me to stop trying to set up camp and call it home. It also allows me to see life as a process with completion somewhere down the road. Thus, I'm freed from feeling like a failure when things are not finished, and hopeful that it will be as my journey comes to its end. I want adventure, and this reminds me that I am living in it. Life is not a problem to be solved, it's an adventure to be lived. Guys, go for it. Listen, if you've enjoyed this, I'm sure you have. Can you share it with your buddies? Can you gossip it to your friends and give us a great review on Spotify or iTunes so the more people get the algorithm, the more people get to hear about it. I want to thank Adam Thomas Steer for the editing, Mike Sandeman for the mixing. Next week, another fantastic guest, a very different journey. But in the meantime, have a good one. God bless you, and toodaloo.